Welcome to this webinar. Due to the sensitive nature and content within these sessions, we would advise you undertake the training in a private space where you are unlikely to be interrupted. All contact numbers for the agencies mentioned within this webinar will be provided as a PDF file to download. We will use the word survivor and victim interchangeably to portray those on the receiving end of domestic abuse. This presentation is brought to you in partnership with Mid and West Wales Vowder SV Partnership, Dewis Choice and Petals Training Limited. Older survivors of domestic abuse. Older survivors fall outside the generalised public picture of domestic abuse that typically depicts a white, heterosexual female with a young family experiencing abuse from an intimate partner. We know that domestic abuse has no boundaries and spans all ages, social classes, race, gender, religion and nationality. However, older people are invariably the forgotten victims of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse in later life is a widespread, under-recognised problem that has a devastating impact on the lives of older people. The invisibility of older people in research studies is also reflected in the media, marketing, and campaign material, and this has huge implications for older people victims identifying themselves as victims of abuse. When we talk about domestic abuse, we are largely informed by who we see as our service users and who we see in the media. This is problematic for people who fall outside of this model. For example, older people, LGBTQ+ community, people with complex needs such as disability and care and support needs, and those experiencing abuse from adult family members. Abuse may take many forms, and frequently an individual will experience multiple types of abuse, including physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial and economic abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, coercive and controlling behaviour. However, an older person may have a different perspective. Identifying a broader variation of relationships where abuse occurs can be further disguised by natural signs of aging, declining health, decreasing mobility, capacity, care dynamics. Research from Dewis Choice has highlighted systematic invisibility of older survivors' lived experiences in the media, research, policy and practice, which has implications for the identification of abuse by practitioners, communities and older victims themselves, particularly with regards to seeking help. The adapted Duluth Wheel. Dewis Choice have adapted the Duluth Power and Control Wheel based on the lived experiences of 120 survivors, aged 60 to 93 years of age, who have engaged with the Dewis Choice initiative. The wheel can be used to help identify abusive behaviours and help promote discussion to explore patterns of behaviour the old person may be experiencing. Some of the behaviours in the wheel may not seem that serious in isolation, for example, making a cruel comment, but when the behaviour is continuous or an older person is exposed to a combination of abusive behaviours, for example also restricting someone's access to communication, controlling finances, there is a pattern emerging which can have a significant impact on individual well-being and mental health. The Power and Control Wheel can be used by practitioners to highlight areas of abuse, but can also be used as a tool with older survivors to help them identify patterns of abusive behaviours. Statistics. Currently, the only comprehensive data on older victims and survivors is that collected by the Crime Survey for England and Wales. However, as yet, the data is only available for victims up to the age of 74. The data from this survey found that 280,000 people aged 60 to 74 experienced domestic abuse in 2019. In Wales, the Older People's Commissioner reports that it is estimated that 40,000 older people experience abuse every year in their own homes. The coronavirus, COVID-19 outbreak, has meant that many older people have been asked to stay at home at all times. This not only makes them more vulnerable to abuse by those they are dependent on, but also isolates them from ability and sources of seeking help. Prevalence rates of abuse in the older population are largely unknown due to widespread underreporting and underrecording, primarily because there is a misconception that domestic abuse does not occur in later life. With the growing rate of the ageing population, the incidence of domestic abuse in later life is likely to increase. Data from Dewis Choice found that victims aged 61 plus are more likely to experience abuse from an adult family member than they are a current intimate partner, a pattern echoed in Safe Lives' larger dataset. 1 in 4 domestic homicides involve a victim over the age of 60. This is the fastest rising age group and reflects people not recognising domestic abuse in later life and displaying a rule of optimism. Barriers to accessing support. Do older people seek help? Older people are less likely to report than other age groups, with 80% of older adults aged 61 years and over not being visible in services. They rarely access specialist domestic abuse services. Also, the statutory sector uptake is poor, with referrals usually coming in via a third-party report. So what are the challenges faced by older people when seeking help? Too often we are quick to assume that barriers to seeking help are experienced on an individual level, including shame, embarrassment, self-blame, fear of repercussions, and not wanting to break up the family unit. Although these may all be valid barriers, research indicates that organisational and systematic barriers have the most significant impact on the failure to seek help. There are numerous barriers, but we will name a few that are frequently reported in our research. As we know, isolation in later life is a predominant feature. Therefore, considerable emphasis is placed on having family and friends in close proximity. An agency involvement that threatens social ties may be considered undesirable, particularly when severing family ties with abuser or abusers can lead to loss of access to grandchildren and subsequent social isolation. Societal expectations related to later life can influence attitudes and beliefs, social expectations within marriage, a degree of acceptance, the belief that they shouldn't air their dirty laundry in public, financial concerns, ignorance of the existing services that are available to help. Care and support needs may mean that older people are often more emotionally, financially and physically dependent on their perpetrator than their younger counterparts because of age-related health issues. A consequence of this dependency means that older people are reluctant to report abuse because they fear they will be institutionalised and placed in a care home. The older victim may also be a carer for their partner, adult child or parent. Our research shows that existing services are not always suitable for older victims. Generic services and support groups tend to focus on younger age groups and concentrate on issues such as child custody or job training that may not be relevant issues for older people. Case study. Anwen was referred to Dewis Choice for support following a disclosure to a community nurse of financial and emotional abuse from her son and daughter-in-law, with whom she had lived for 2 years. Anwen explained how her son controlled most aspects of her daily life, denying her access to her bank account and preventing her from managing her diabetes effectively by controlling what and when she could eat. Anwen's daughter-in-law claimed carer's allowance but often little support to Anwen, who had multiple health needs and limited mobility. Anwen wanted to live independently but did not know what her rights and entitlements were for housing, benefits or support with her care needs. Anwen was eventually supported through a multi-agency response from her choice support worker, the nursing team, housing, occupational therapy and social care to help her move into her own home and regain her independence. Practitioners worked together to ensure Anwen felt in control, reducing the barriers she faced and ensuring her complex needs were met. When responding to older victims, there is not a universal model. Research by Dewis established that each individual will have multiple help-seeking and justice goals for themselves, the perpetrator and the community, that can change over time. For instance, here we have 2 examples that present 2 very different help-seeking outcomes. One client who experienced years of coercive control from her partner wanted him to be punished and for him to have a restraining order so he could not make contact with her. This was a female client, intimate partner violence. These are her words. Well, I would like him, the perpetrator, to be done, charged with control, charged with domestic abuse and removed from the area and removed from my life. I want my life back. I can't carry on like this. It's just all too much, really, and I have been living like this for so long. The second case involves another woman who is experiencing domestic abuse from her son and looking for help and support for them both. This is a female client. These are her words. It's about time that somebody listens to me and listens to my son. Help us, please. Someone help us, because I don't know which way to turn. Age UK, which received 655 inquiries to its advice line on the subject in the last year, says it is essential the law recognises that older people are affected by domestic abuse and ensures they get the help they need. This is a quote taken from an article by Age UK. Nighttime is my favourite part of the day. I can rest knowing he can't get to me upstairs, and I feel safe. Grace, aged 81. It is crucial that practitioners place the victim's wishes at the heart of any decision-making process to ensure ongoing engagement and to continue to safely monitor the situation. What can you do to help? At Dewis Choice, one of the key messages older people tell us about help seeking is, I wanted someone to ask me, and if they had asked me, I would have told them. You may be the only person the individual has contact with, other than the person who is causing them harm. Therefore, you may be the only person they can tell about the abuse. So it is important not to waste the opportunity to ask. Remember to ask and ask again. There are some simple steps you can take to help them disclose abuse and seek help and support. 1. Attempt to create a safe and private space to have a conversation alone with the older person, where your conversation will not be overheard. If you are having a conversation over the phone, be aware that your conversation with the person may not be private. Ask if there is anyone else at home or in the room with them. Try to create a space to have a private conversation with the older person. If possible, find out if there is a time when they are alone. For example, does the person they are with go out to the shop or exercise? Is there a time of day when they are busy with other activities? If during your first contact with an older person they tell you everything is fine and they have no concerns, remember to ask again during your next contact and keep asking. 2. An older person may not feel ready to disclose anything, but your conversation may have prompted them to think about it. Next time, they may be ready. If you do not ask again, the opportunity may be lost. 3. Ensure that you use language the person is comfortable with. They may not recognise that what they are experiencing is abuse and might not be comfortable with the term. Be led by the language they are using to describe what is happening and use language that is descriptive. 4. Allow the individual to disclose at their own pace. It may take time for an older person to fully disclose what is happening to them. Do not assume that they have told you everything during the first disclosure. This is particularly important when assessing risk. Ensure you give them further opportunities to talk. 5. Check the person knows who to contact for help. Consider how socially connected the person is. Are they always accompanied by a particular person? Does that person appear to do everything for them? For example, speak for them. If you call and a partner or family member assures you the person is fine, always ask to speak directly to the older person. 6. Promote engagement. How can you increase social contact opportunities? Suggest activities or variations to care packages. These will help reduce reliance on an abusive person and keep avenues open for disclosure. This can also help to disrupt abusive behaviour as the abuser is aware that someone else is watching. Positive social contacts can help with safety planning too. For example, a plan can be placed for a concern to be raised if the older person misses their regular call with a designated person. 7. Safely record disclosures. Ensure concerns are recorded. Refer back to WHEEL. Look for patterns of behaviour and escalation. Not just escalation in severity of harm, but escalation in frequency, particularly when accompanied with increased isolation. Reassure the older person that they can talk to you in confidence and you will not share information with their family and friends. Specific support in working with older victims. Dewis Choice is a research-based Welsh initiative that has been co-produced by older people in community settings to develop a locally responsive and needs-based service for older victim survivors of domestic abuse from intimate partners or family members. It is the first dedicated service for men and women over 60 years and over who have experienced domestic abuse in the UK. They have provided long-term intensive support for older female and male victims or survivors, and where safe to do so, their family members. Alongside the service delivery, they have conducted the first global study that explores older people's justice-seeking and help-seeking journey in the context of domestic abuse and coercive and controlling behaviours. The Dewis Choice initiative was developed in response to earlier research at the Centre for Age, Gender and Social Justice. Our research found that older victim survivors were diverted away from accessing traditional justice responses compared to other age groups and denied the right to make informed choices. These decisions were often based on ageist and paternalistic responses, which violated individuals' human rights to be treated equally and have access to justice. In addition, unlike other DVA services that use coordinated community responses for older victim survivors were usually restricted to a single agency, ill-equipped to deal with the complexity of DVA. These findings show significant training was required for organisations to recognise the prevalence, nature and complexity of DVA in later life. Training has been delivered across a range of levels, from training 380 volunteers to providing specialist training for domestic abuse practitioners responding to high-risk victims in partnership with Save Lives. Here at Dewis Choice, we support you, the practitioner. Dewis Choice, within their remit, have been striving to raise awareness of older victims of abuse across policy, practice and communities. This has involved participating in regional and national advisory groups and training nearly 9,000 practitioners across the UK. They have interviewed 1,700 older people from a range of backgrounds, including carers, those living with dementia, individuals from the LGBTQ+ community, and those with disabilities and life-changing illnesses. They have promoted pro-social modelling behaviour and upskilled volunteers to respond to disclosures within their own communities. The initiative has challenged age and gender discrimination towards older victim survivors of domestic abuse, both through raising the visibility of older victim survivors engaging with the initiative and through the development of training and tools for practitioners. Dewis have developed a range of free resources to support you and your organisation. They have online training that can help you identify domestic abuse and respond effectively to disclosures, use appropriate language to encourage engagement, recognise barriers to help seeking, including barriers for LGBTQ+ groups and those living with dementia, understand the impact mental health has on individuals' well-being. They have adapted the Duluth Wheel, which you can use with your clients to help identify forms of abuse. They also have a safety planning tool that can support you in devising individualised safety plans for older people in a variety of situations and make appropriate referrals. Their Practitioner's Guidebook offers practical advice and support for practitioners supporting older people across 3 generations with multiple and diverse needs. All their resources have been directly informed by their research with practitioners and victim survivors as they have engaged with criminal, civil and welfare options. You can contact us via the following: For 24-hour support, call the Live Fear Free helpline on 0808 8010 800. If someone is in immediate risk of harm or danger, don't delay. Dial 999. All contact numbers will be provided in the PDF document alongside this webinar. The following 3 slides show the variety of organisations that offer support across Mid and West Wales. Support services for those displaying the behaviour. We need to identify and stop harmful behaviours as soon as they do occur, and use emerging evidence and practice to increase and improve the responses that challenge harmful behaviour. Save lives. To deliver long-term sustainable change and reduce the number of victims, we must challenge perpetrators to stop. For support services for those displaying the behaviours and wanting to change, can contact 3 local services and a UK charity for support and advice. Threshold, Callan, Montgomeryshire Family Crisis Centre, and Respect, UK-wide. Thank you for your time and attention today. Contact details for all agencies within this presentation can be found within the PDF document attached.